Hello. I just thought it might be kind of cool for you to hear the first chapter of this book, since we're talking about classic children's literature. So here it is, Rabbit Hill by Robert Lawson, one of my all-time favorite books. And I think I told you before, Robert Lawson is also the illustrator. So there's the first page called The Folks Are Here. Just a little intro. And there's the opening. I just love his drawings. Okay. Dedicated the book for T, who loves little Georgie. There's the contents. And Rabbit Hill. And here we go. Chapter 1, New Folks Coming. All the hill was boiling with excitement. On every side there rose a continual chattering and squeaking, whispering and whistling as the animals discussed the great news. Through it all could be heard again and again the words, "New folks comin'." Little Georgie came tumbling down the rabbit burrow, panting out the tidings. "New folks comin'," he shouted. "New folks comin', Mother, Father, new folks comin' into the big house." Mother looked up from the very thin soup that she was stirring. "Well, it's high time there were new folks in the big house, high time. And I do hope they're plantin' folks, not shiftless like the last ones. 3 years now since there's been a good garden on this place. Never enough to put anything up for the winters, and last winter the worst in years. I don't know how we ever got through it, and I don't know how we'll ever make out if they're not plantin' folks. I just don't know. With food getting scarcer all the time and no place to get a vegetable except the fat man's at the crossroads and him with his dogs and all and crossing the black road twice a day to get there, I just don't know. I just don't know." Mother was quite a worrier. "Now, my dear," said Father, "do try to adopt a more optimistic attitude. This news of Georgie's may promise the approach of a more felicitous and bountiful era. Perhaps it would be well if I were to indulge in a short stroll about the neighborhood and seek confirmation of this most auspicious rumor." Father was a Southern gentleman and always talked like that. As he picked his way through the long-neglected garden, the big brick house loomed up dark and lonely in the twilight. It looked very gloomy, no lights in the windows, no folks about. The roof shingles were curled and rotting. Blinds hung crookedly. In the walks and driveway, tall, dried weeds rattled and scraped whenever a breeze stirred. Now that all the earth was stirring with spring, it seemed even more depressing. There had been a time, he remembered it wistfully, when things had been quite different here on the hill. The lawns then had been thick carpets of delicious grass, the fields heavy with clover. Garden vegetables had been plentiful. He and Mother and all their numerous offspring had lived well. All the little animals had lived well. There had been good folks there in those days, children too, who had played tag with them evenings, who had squealed with delight when Mother skunks, their little ones strung out behind in solemn Indian file, had paraded across the lawn. There had been a dog, a lady spaniel, old and fat, who carried on endless noisy arguments with the woodchucks, but had never been known to harm anyone. In fact, she had once found a lost fox cub and nursed it and raised it with her own puppies. Let's see, that cub would be Foxy's uncle, or was it his father? He couldn't remember, it seemed so long ago. Then evil days had fallen upon the hill. The good folks had moved away, and their successors had been mean, shiftless, inconsiderate. Sumac, bayberry, and poison ivy had taken over the fields. The lawns had gone to crabgrass and weeds, and there was no garden. Last autumn, even, they had gone, leaving the empty fields leaving the empty house with its desolate black windows and its shutters flapping through the winter storms. He passed the tool house where in the old days bags of seed and chicken feed had always rewarded the hungry field mice. It had been empty for years. Every grain of food had been searched out during the cold, hard winters. None of the animals ever went there anymore. Porky the Woodchuck was on the side lawn hungrily snatching at the straggly patches of grass. His fur looked moth-eaten and he was quite thin. A very different animal from the fat, waddling Porky, who last fall had squeezed himself down his burrow to sleep away the winter. Now he was trying to make up for lost time. After each mouthful, he would raise his head, look all around, and grumble, then snatch another mouthful. It made his grumbling come in short bursts. "Look at this lawn," he growled. "Just look at it. Gulp, gulp. Not a leaf of clover in it. Nothing but crabgrass and chickweed. Gulp, gulp. Time new folks was coming. Gulp, gulp. High time." He paused and sat up as Father courteously greeted him. "Good evening, Porky. Good evening. It is indeed a pleasure to see you about again. I trust you passed a comfortable winter and that this pleasant spring evening finds you in the best of health." "Dunno," grumbled Porky. "Health's all right, I guess, but I'm thin as all get out, and how in tarnation's a fellow going to put on any fat on his ribs with this stuff?" He waved disgustedly at the weed-choked fields, the patchy lawn. "Them last folks were slops, that's what they were, slops. Never done nothing, never planted nothing, never took care of nothing, let everything run down. Time they were gone, good riddance, I say. Time there were new folks coming. High time." "That is precisely the subject on which I wish to consult you," said Father. "I have heard certain talk concerning the possibility of new arrivals, and wondered if you had any definite knowledge of the facts of the case. Is there any clear proof of this most desirable addition to our neighborhood, or is it mere hearsay?" "Hearsay, hearsay," said Porky a little doubtfully. He scratched his ear and spat thoughtfully. "Well now, I'll tell you. I hear say as how that real estate fellow was up to the house 2-3 days ago with a couple of people going all around inside and outside. I hear say as Bill Hickey, the carpenter feller, was up here yesterday a-poking at the roof and at the tool house and the chicken house and figuring figures on a bit of paper. I hear say as Louis Kernstock, the mason, was up here today kicking and poking around them old stone walls and them tumble-down steps and figuring figures too. And I hear say this, and this is important." He hitched himself closer and banged the ground with his paw. "This is real important. I hear say as Tim McGrath, you know, the fella in the cottage down to the fork, does plowing and planting and such. I hear say as he was up here this afternoon looking over the old garden and the lawn and the north field here, and he was figuring figures too. Now, what do you think of that?" That's where I'm going to stop. And anyway, I just thought I'd give you a little taste of Rabbit Hill. I love you. Bye, babe.